examination of the USDA hemp production program will come to order. Welcome and thank you for joining today's hearing. After brief opening remarks, members will receive testimony from our witnesses today, and then the hearing will open for questioning. I want to thank my colleagues and our witnesses for joining me today as we host this important discussion on hemp and the USDA hemp production program. Today we will hear from a panel of experts, including producers, researchers, tribal members, and state agriculture commissioners who will provide an overview of the hemp industry and insights towards the 2023 Farm Bill. Until recently, the hemp industry was outlawed due to restrictions put in place in the Marijuana Tax Act of 1938, and hemp was treated no differently than marijuana under the Controlled Substance Act. In 2014, the Farm Bill removed longstanding federal restrictions on the cultivation and production of hemp, allowing more state departments of agriculture and institutions of higher learning to produce this crop as part of a pilot program for research purposes. In the 2018 Farm Bill, Congress authorized commercial production of hemp and directed USDA to establish the U.S. Domestic Hemp Production Program, giving USDA the responsibility of cultivating and approving plans submitted to states, territories, or tribal authorities who wish to regulate hemp production. In January of 2021, USDA issued its final ruling on regulating the production of hemp in the United States. Feedback from public comments, as well as lessons learned from previous growing seasons, helped influence regulations established on the interim final rule published in October of 2019. USDA continues to conduct research and outreach to help support the burgeoning hemp sector. In my home district of the U.S. Virgin Islands, small and local hemp producers have already taken advantage of the program to provide a new source of revenue for their farms and additional jobs to their community. With guidance of the USDA, the Virgin Islands has the potential to begin a new economic era that will benefit the government, local farmers, and local business entrepreneurs. The production of hemp has created value for producers and consumers. Over $800 million in 2021, with over 55,000 acres of hemp planted. While markets for hemp production products such as fiber, grain, and flour are developing, they are still volatile and uncertain. To support farmers, producers, and the ongoing development of this re-emerging sector, it's crucial that USDA continue to work to support and expand hemp production and the hemp industry. As we look towards the next Farm Bill, we can continue to address ongoing issues and provide our farmers, producers, processors, and agricultural researchers with the resources they need. This hearing is an opportunity for us to hear what we can do to ensure the continued growth and development of this resurging crop. I now like to welcome the distinguished ranking member, the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Baird, for any opening remarks he would like to give.
Well, good morning. And I want to thank you, Chair Plaskett, for holding this session and this hearing. And I really appreciate the witnesses that are here today and you giving your time to really help us understand what's going on in the hemp industry and to update us. So I think it's noteworthy to mention that this is really the first hearing that the House Committee on Agriculture has held on hemp ever.
Yes.
So mind you, the 2014 Farm Bill authorized the hemp research pilot program, and then the 2018 Farm Bill subsequently legalized hemp production at the federal level. And to say this is important is an understatement. So I'm pleased we have a well-rounded stakeholder panel here today with representatives from the hemp industry, including 2 state regulators, a tribal representative, a researcher, and a company that manufactures hemp products. That said, I do believe it is a missed opportunity that we don't hear from the federal agencies that we are tasked and they are tasked with implementing provisions related to the hemp today. So, Madam Chair, I remain hopeful that we can have an opportunity to hear from both the USDA and the FDA at one of our future meetings. As the hemp industry rapidly expanded following the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, a wave of innovation followed, and as researchers and companies started identifying uses for hemp fiber, including building materials, insulation, animal bedding, concrete, and even car parts, this is one of my areas of interest, and I look forward to hearing more about that today. This rapid expansion of the hemp industry also led to increased interest and research surrounding the use of hemp in animal feed. Given my background in animal science and monogastric nutrition, I look forward to hearing more about this research, including whether it has been tested and what is on the horizon for that kind of a product. And even though the legalization of hemp has spurred innovation in the use of hemp fiber and grain, we are seeing much of the hemp grown in the United States used to manufacture hemp-derived CBD. Since the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, there has been no regulatory framework from the Food and Drug Administration for CBD products, leading to some uncertainty for producers, for manufacturers, retailers, and as well as consumers. While we are certain to hear about successes in the hemp industry, it's important to note that we have many challenges, leading to a significant decline in the number of hemp acres planted since 2019. And as we discuss potential areas for change in the 2023 Farm Bill, it is critical that we comprehensively understand these challenges to ensure our policies benefit producers and consumers alike. Again, I'd like to thank the witnesses for taking the time to be with us here today, and I look forward to hearing more about the work they are doing within the hemp industry. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you so much to the ranking member of the subcommittee for your tireless efforts to support farmers and to be such an incredible colleague on the subcommittee. The chair would request that other members submit their opening statements for the record so witnesses may begin their testimony and ensure that there's ample time for questioning. I'm pleased to welcome 5 outstanding witnesses to the subcommittee today. Our witnesses bring to our hearing a wide range of experience and expertise, and I thank you for joining. Our first witness will be Dr. Brandy Phipps, PhD, Assistant Professor, Department of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Central State University, Cedar, Ohio. Our second witness today is Mr. Marcus Greeno, the Executive Director of the Hempstead Project Heart in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Third witness is Mr. Eric Wang, the Chief Executive Officer of EcoFiber. He is testifying today on behalf of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. Also, Dr. Ryan F. Quarles, who is the Commissioner of Kentucky Department of Agriculture. And our fifth and final witness is Ms. Kate Greenberg, who is the Commissioner of the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Welcome to you all today. We will now proceed to hearing your testimony. You each will have 5 minutes, and the timer should be visible to you and will count down to 0, at which point your time has expired. Dr. Phipps, please begin when you are ready.
Chair Plaskett, thank you for the invitation and opportunity to speak to the Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research Subcommittee of the House Committee on Agriculture. Central State University, where I am faculty, is in Ohio District 10, represented by Congressperson Mike Turner. Central State is a public, historically black college and university and an 1890 land-grant institution. As such, I want to acknowledge the 2 Ohio representatives of this subcommittee, Representatives Brown and Balderson, and Chairperson Scott of the House Committee on Agriculture, who has been a consistent champion of the 1890 land-grant institutions. Chair Plaskett and the members of this subcommittee, I want to thank you for continuing to include the 1890 voice in the work that you do in this committee. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the professional staff of this committee who've been excellent to work with this past week. I am Brandy Phipps, Assistant Professor in the Department of Agricultural and Life Sciences and a researcher in the Food, Nutrition, and Health Project of the Agriculture Research and Development Program at Central State University. My background is in biomedical and nutritional sciences, and my work is in what others have coined sustainable nutrition science, or the intersection of food systems transformation, sustainability, and nutrition and health equity. I tend to partner with other researchers and community leaders across disciplines to find holistic solutions to complex problems related to human health and quality of life. For example, how do we equitably feed a growing population in ways that protect natural resources and contribute to a sustainable and a resilient economy? To that end, my work with hemp fits nicely within those goals, and I have focused primarily on its nutritional and nutraceutical value for humans. This includes an ongoing $1.3 million contract with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration with Dr. Craig Schlottenhofer, where we evaluate the chemical constituents of smoked and vaped hemp products. I also serve as project director for a $10 million 5-year sustainable agriculture systems project funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's NIFA and referred to as the Sushi Project. With the continued rise of chronic diet-related conditions like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes in the United States, strategies to produce and increase the intake of heart-healthy foods, such as hemp grain and fish, are critical to slow the rise of chronic disease in our country. Concurrently, in order to become a stable component of the agricultural economy, the nascent U.S. hemp market needs diversification and a robust establishment of the grain sector. The Sushi Project addresses both needs as it investigates the use of hemp grain as a feed ingredient for aquaculture systems. Hemp grain has the potential to be an excellent domestic feed ingredient for many types of livestock. It is nutrient-dense, with seeds either consumed whole or dehulled as hearts. Hemp hearts have a healthy balance of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids, which are known as heart-healthy, and easily digestible protein, and it is one of the few plant protein sources with sufficient levels of all the essential amino acids that humans need. In Europe, hemp grain is already approved for use in animal feeds, and in the US, the hearts, protein, and seed oil have been established as generally regarded as safe or GRAS for human consumption. Exploring ways in which we can open up additional markets in the hemp sector, including establishing hemp as a safe feed ingredient, could provide new grain markets for the hemp sector and sustainable feed. Importantly, studies indicate that incorporation of hemp into feeds may provide key improvements to the nutritional profile of those animal products, thereby enhancing human health. In addition to what I present here today and what has been submitted in my written testimony, Dr. Schlottenhofer and I recently published Perspectives of Industrial Hemp Cultivation, a chapter in the book Industrial Hemp, Food and Nutraceutical Applications, which overviews the status of the hemp industry in the U.S. and across the globe. Thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this important discussion.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Greeno, please begin when you are ready.
Poso mani wiok, nakato manowich kikitim. Hello everyone, I'm going to speak. My name is Marcus Greeno, and I'm the Executive Director of Hempstead Project Heart, a nonprofit organization dedicated to redeveloping thriving hemp economies that connect tribal, urban, and rural communities throughout the United States. Hempstead Project Heart is a member of the Rural Coalition, the Peace Development Fund, and the National Hemp Association's Standing Committee of Hemp Organizations. I've come before you today to testify on the USDA hemp production program. I'm also here for the American hemp pioneers who pushed our country towards acceptance. Alex Whiteplume, Chris Boucher, Jack Herrera, Barbara Filipino, Lawrence Serbin, and Richard Rose. Hemp has a conflicting past in our country. From the founding of our nation and lead up to the passage of the Controlled Substances Act, hemp was considered a cash crop and useful for our military during World War II. After passage of the Controlled Substances Act, hemp became defined as a drug and non-useful, both of which is untrue. The best way I've educated the American people over the last 6 years on the difference between hemp and marijuana is an analogy of the pepper family. With peppers, you have habanero, chipotle, ghost pepper, jalapeno. These peppers is what I would call your high-grade marijuana, whereas green, yellow, and red bell peppers is what I would call your hemp. Both peppers are part of the same family, but distinctly different. The historical perspective of hemp played a large role in building our country during the early years of our democracy. Many states such as Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Virginia, and Wisconsin, to name a few, have rich histories of hemp playing a vital role in their economies. From 1902 to 1944, the USDA studied hemp extensively as a solution to our country's fiber shortage. Leicester Dewey led this research for USDA. Dewey, with the help of Dr. Andrew Wright and Senator Alexander Wiley, created the 20th century American hemp industry. Through their research, they uncovered 3/4 of the land in the United States can grow hemp. Hemp grows well with crop rotations. Hemp's long taproot penetrates the soil and loosens the undersoil layers. Drying kilns for hemp fiber should not exceed 150 degrees Fahrenheit. There is a wealth of knowledge on how to produce and process hemp from these records at the National Agricultural Library. My path as an American hemp farmer is not linear. I began my journey as a hemp researcher in 2015 for my tribal nation, the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, and the College of Menominee Nation, an institution of higher education. We grew hemp on our homelands for research purposes to spur economic development for our people under Section 7606 of the 2014 Farm Bill and under the guidance of the Department of Justice's Wilkinson Memorandum. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful due to federal overreach by the Drug Enforcement Agency's raid on our hemp crop in October 2015. Under the auspices of a marijuana raid on tribal lands, the DEA took our hemp crop at harvest time that had seed with a 1-year acclimation to the Great Lakes region. Even our topsoil was seized by a bulldozer. We never received the test results from DEA to prove our hemp had tested over the legal limit. After the 2015 growing season, I dedicated myself to be an education advocate and push for hemp to be legalized in Wisconsin and the United States through Hempstead Project Heart. As part of the coalition of Americans, we pushed hemp to be legal again and were successful in Wisconsin in 2017. In 2018, our coalition focused on the Farm Bill to revise Section 7606, make hemp fully legal in the United States, and uphold tribal sovereignty for the 574 tribes within our country to grow hemp without federal interference. We were successful, and for the committee members I testify before today, I say Wawanan, thank you for your support. As the 2013 Farm Bill is upon us, I want to advocate to strengthen the hemp production provisions from the 2018 Farm Bill. There needs to be a separation between the definition and regulation of industrial hemp from cannabinoid and floral hemp. These crops are easily differentiated with a visual inspection. The industry advocates for a grain and fiber exemption from testing and background checks for producers. This is also legislation that we introduced soon called the Industrial Hemp Exemption Act of 2022. Bank regulations need revision to ease current restrictions for hemp operations. It is difficult to find a bank that will take business accounts connected to hemp production and processing, not to mention insurance companies. There needs to be a USDA stamp of approval for hemp being shipped between the various jurisdictions in the United States. This will help with any issues that arise with interstate commerce. While these suggestions do not cover all the needed changes, these top 3 will enhance the American hemp industry, ease burdensome regulations for farmers, and create more demand for hemp-made materials. I believe my time is up.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Mr. Wong, please begin when you are ready.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to testify to you today about the emerging U.S. hemp industry, its challenges, and its many opportunities that can be achieved through your assistance in the 2023 Farm Bill. Today, I'm testifying as the CEO of Ecofiber and also on behalf of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, the industry's leading national advocacy organization, for which I serve as the Vice President of Sustainability. Ecofiber is a diversified industrial hemp company with operations in Georgetown, Kentucky, Greensboro, North Carolina, and Sydney, Australia. We have vertically integrated business operations across 3 divisions, and these 3 divisions include hemp grain for food, the use of the hemp flower for CBD, and the use of the hemp stalk for high-performance industrial uses. We've been in operation in Australia since 1999 and in the U.S. since 2015, following the start of the hemp pilot program, which was in the 2014 Farm Bill. Over the past 20 years, Ecofibers developed one of the largest and most diverse hemp genetics collections. And in the United States, for the 22 and upcoming 2023 growing season, we will be providing hemp genetics to growers and universities to support 24,000 acres of industrial hemp for commercial and research purposes. This growing will take place across 19 states in the U.S. While Ecofiber is a publicly traded company on the Australian Stock Exchange, most of our operations, and more importantly, over 90% of our capital, has been invested in our operations in Kentucky and North Carolina. I have disproportionately invested into the U.S. due to the tremendous potential of the industrial hemp market, but more importantly, the strong bipartisan support that I've seen for developing a new, highly sustainable agricultural crop for U.S. farmers. Secondly, I've seen significant support for introducing new U.S. manufacturing industries to take advantage of the multitude of uses for industrial hemp. And finally, there's an opportunity for a net zero carbon solution via industrial hemp, which is considered to be one of the most carbon negative agricultural or forestry crops available. Given that most things we produce and do in the world today are actually carbon positive, industrial hemp allows us, in a good way, to actually think negative. While there is tremendous opportunity, there are some challenges that the industry does face as it develops and matures. In passing the 2018 Farm Bill, Congress made it very clear of its intent to support the production and sale of hemp and hemp derivatives such as CBD. As a result of the 2018 Farm Bill, thousands of U.S. growers planted hemp in response, with farming for CBD actually representing most of the all hemp acreage at that time. However, public statements by FDA officials stating that it's unlawful to sell ingestible hemp-derived CBD products have taken their toll on the industry. CBD commerce and investment has been chilled due to continued inaction at the federal level, which has impaired economic opportunity for American farmers and processors. However, farmers are not the only ones who've been negatively impacted by this regulatory uncertainty. Consumers have also been impacted. Bad actors sell products without appropriate safeguards and misleading consumers with false label claims. Furthermore, some struggling farmers and businesses more recently have pivoted to market intoxicating products such as Delta-8 THC, which has rightfully prompted the FDA and CDC warnings that they pose significant consumer health and safety risk, particularly for minors. A clear regulatory pathway for CBD would not only relieve the economic pressure that's leading to this product shift, but it would also help ensure that products do not contain intoxicating hemp ingredients. At a recent May hearing, FDA Commissioner Califf testified to his disappointment in the lack of agency action on CBD and expressed his interest in developing a regulatory path, but he stated the FDA's authorities are limited under the current law. As you develop the 2023 Farm Bill, I asked you to provide the FDA with that authority by including language such as that found in H.R. 841, a bill that has 41 bipartisan co-sponsors that would regulate CBD and other intoxicating hemp industries, derivatives such as dietary supplements. I hope you will also consider including provisions from Representative Shelley Pingree's Hemp Advancement Act, which among other important things would take necessary steps to limit the hemp product pathway to only non-intoxicating compounds. So in closing, I would like to thank this committee for its time today, and I believe that regulatory clarity for CBD will help create the positive momentum required to see the U.S. once again become the international leader in industrial hemp. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now invite Mr. Quarles to begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Chairwoman Plaskett and Ranking Member Baird, for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Ryan Quarles, and I serve as the Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture, first elected in 2015 and re-elected to this office in 2019. It's an honor to serve our employees, our 76,000 farm families, and the 200,000 Kentuckians that engage in agriculture every day. From 2020 to 2021, I also served as National President of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, which gave me the opportunity to learn not just about hemp, but other agricultural issues that help benefit Kentucky and American agriculture. As you may know, Kentucky is one of the first states that focused on bringing hemp back. Our history with hemp dates back to a very famous Kentucky hemp farmer, Henry Clay, who went on to serve as Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. Hemp was first grown in Kentucky in 1775, and to this day, many farm families have a deep personal connection to hemp. My great-grandfather grew hemp on the banks of the Kentucky River, while my grandfather fought in World War II as a Marine. When taking office in 2016, we took full advantage of the 2014 Farm Bill's authorization for state departments to research this crop underneath Section 7606. And I'm proud to say that we accomplished that goal. Kentucky's legislative and regulatory framework is widely recognized today as one of the best in the nation. We are grateful that Kentucky's hemp licensing program and data collected through the University of Kentucky and other colleges and universities were frequently cited in the final rule that USDA promulgated in January of 2021. Today, Kentucky enters its 9th year of growing hemp again legally. And here are a few products that we make. Number one, as cited earlier, Victory Hemp Foods, hemp hearts, which are sold legally in grocery stores across America. We have another company named Hemp Wood that is selling hardwood floors made out of hemp, as well as Ecofiber, who you just heard from with Eric Wong. We also have floral products primarily centered around CBD products that are being sold across the United States in pharmacies and Tractor Supply Company. This is in addition to dozens of small family-owned hemp companies marketing CBD across the country. Today, we are focused on challenging our hemp companies to set up roots in Kentucky. Like many other states, we saw a rapid expansion in the number of acreage grown through 2015 through 2019, which was followed by an equally rapid decline beginning the 2020 grow season. One reason for this decline was the production increased after the 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp, and the amount of hemp grown far outpaced demand. So here in 2022, we're still growing hemp in Kentucky, but with smaller acreage. Some hemp-based companies in Kentucky are doing quite well, like Ecofiber. They're innovating and continuing to create new ways to market their products. Now, if we were to ask me what the biggest issue facing hemp today, it would be this: a lack of direction from the FDA. Without clear direction from the FDA regarding products containing hemp-derived CBD, large retailers will not carry CBD products, and many business leaders are reluctant to move forward with the development and manufacturing of these products. The FDA needs to provide regulatory pathways for products containing CBD. The FDA needs to act now. If the FDA gave us direction, more private sector investment in hemp products would occur, and many well-known consumer brands will have tremendous interest in hemp products. We're waiting on the FDA to do their job. It is worth noting that we're now almost a decade into growing hemp legally again in the United States, and we still don't have proper guidance from the FDA. Meanwhile, we continue our research with the University of Kentucky, Murray State University, Western Kentucky University, with over a dozen academic research projects going on right now. And look, I know we have a long way to go. I'm proud of the hemp licensing program that we've built here in Kentucky. We have laid the groundwork for the Commonwealth to be the epicenter of hemp production in the United States, like it once was historically. I want to publicly thank our members of the Kentucky Congressional Delegation and all those that helped get hemp where it's at today. In particular, I would like to thank Kentucky's own Doris Hamilton, probably best known and the best respected state hemp regulatory personnel in the United States. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before your committee today, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And now for our final witness, Ms. Greenberg. Please begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Chairwoman Plaskett, for the invitation to testify before you today. My name is Kate Greenberg. I serve as the Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture and was appointed to this role by Governor Jared Polis in 2018. As Commissioner, I have the privilege of leading the Colorado Department of Ag and our more than 300 employees dedicated to supporting the nearly 40,000 farm and ranch families and almost 200,000 workers across Colorado. Agriculture is one of the top drivers of our economy and workforce, and it is essential to who we are as a state. We have bold goals at the Department of Ag to build the future of agriculture, including building economic and supply chain resilience, advancing voluntary stewardship, supporting future generations, and furthering animal health and welfare. The hemp industry plays an important role in all of these goals. Colorado has been fostering the growth of the hemp industry for the better part of a decade. These efforts are exemplified through the Colorado Hemp Advancement and Management Plan, or CHAMP for short. The CHAMP initiative, which we launched in 2019, was a collaborative effort involving more than 200 stakeholders, state agencies, local and tribal governments, and industry experts. The CHAMP report, which is provided in my written testimony, contains key deliverables addressing the regulation of hemp across the entire supply chain, from research and development to manufacturing and banking and insurance. It also informed the formation of Colorado's state hemp plan, which was approved by USDA and implemented on January 1st of this year. Like most states, following the 2018 Farm Bill, registered hemp acreage in Colorado increased sharply to 87,408 acres in 2019. This was a dramatic uptick from the 1,800 registered acres in 2014. Since 2019, however, we have seen a dramatic decrease, as many states have, down to just under 3,700 registered acres. There are many factors contributing to the current drop in acreage. Overproduction in 2019 led to a rapid saturation of the market, a market at that point which was solely reliant on CBD. In addition, while the 2018 Farm Bill and USDA final rule opened up new opportunities for hemp production, they also placed additional burdens on producers. These burdens, including much higher sampling and testing fees, background checks, and duplicative FSA acreage reporting, may also be contributing factors to this current decline. In a recent survey, many producers also stated that increasing the hemp THC limit to 1% would encourage further production. Since the full implementation of our state plan in January of this year, Colorado has also taken on additional responsibilities. We've expanded our testing from 30% to 100% of all hemp lots. We've approved 18 performance-based sampling plans, including research and disposal plans. Additionally, we have also trained and certified 16 authorized samplers throughout the state. Currently, in Colorado, as in many other states, 100% of regulatory program costs are paid by producers through registration fees. We are facing similar challenges as other states that have turned their programs back to USDA in making our program financially sustainable, particularly in a fluctuating environment. USDA staff have been very responsive to our concerns as we have requested greater flexibility from them through the rulemaking process, and we very much value their partnership. However, there are certain ways in which Congress can provide support to federal agencies to allow for greater flexibility and improve our state-run hemp programs. Specifically, we have 5 recommendations for this committee to consider. The first one is to remove the DEA requirements for testing labs. Our state-of-the-art laboratory began the process of obtaining DEA certification in 2019. However, as of this hearing, we still await their approval. This unnecessary burden can be removed by the help of Congress. Number 2, allow the use of certified seed as an alternative to the strict testing requirement. We believe there is much to learn in this regard, and Colorado is a willing partner to explore what is possible. Number 3, remove background check requirements. Hemp should be treated like the agricultural commodity it is, and producers should not be treated as potential criminals for the production of a legal hemp crop. Number 4, establish a federal grant program to support state hemp programs. A grant program would help states continue to manage our own hemp programs while taking some of the burden off of USDA. And lastly, number 5, support federal agencies, particularly the FDA, in accelerating the regulatory process to allow the use of hemp as feed. In Colorado, we commit every day to helping build a vibrant, resilient future for Colorado agriculture, consumers, and the natural world. I believe there is a promising future for hemp within American agriculture's safe, diverse, and abundant production. In order to achieve that future, we need a stable and sound regulatory environment that will foster diverse market opportunities, sustainable growth, and meaningful investments in natural resource stewardship for the greater good of the industry and future generations. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. At this time, I want to welcome the ranking member, Mr. Thompson, and allow him the opportunity for 5 minutes for any opening statements he would like to make.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair, Ranking Member Baird, for holding today's hearing, and to the witnesses for being here. Much appreciated. We have, I think this is among our first hearing on this commodity, which is amazing given the work that we did laying the foundation 2014, 2018 again Farm Bill. So long overdue, and thank you to both of you for your leadership on this. While I'm excited to hear from such a distinguished group of witnesses, I am disappointed we're having another hearing where USDA, and in this case the FDA too, are missing in action, absent without leave from the discussion. I think we would have, everyone in attendance would have welcomed to hear their perspectives as a part of this hearing. These two agencies have an integral role related to both regulation and oversight of the hemp program, and without them, we are missing a piece of the puzzle on an issue that has never once been publicly discussed by this committee. And I hope we can rectify that in the remaining months of Congress, especially given the testimony, and thank you for your testimony, all five of you, and specifically where you noted the frustration of waiting for the FDA in particular. As we all know, was a lot of excitement. I witnessed it firsthand, and trepidation surrounding hemp following the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. However, after the first growing season, many producers were left with hemp in the field and had no markets to sell their products to. And since 2019 growing season, there's been a significant decrease in the number of acres planted. At the same time, though, we've seen continued investments in using hemp fiber for a variety of industrial products. I think it really has reflected American agriculture innovation, not just in the practice, but identifying uses for this commodity. The investments have been in using hemp fiber for a variety of industrial products. Now, I'm excited to learn more from our witnesses today, and have appreciated hearing that about those innovative work that's being done. These conversations are important to our oversight mandate, so I look forward to now with the Q&A part of this hearing to continue to gain perspective on what worked and what didn't work, and learn more about what stakeholders are thinking as we approach the reauthorization for the 2023 Farm Bill. I do appreciate all the recommendations and thoughts in your oral testimony and your written testimony. I once again want to thank our panel for taking time to be with us today, and with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you very much to the ranking member of the full committee. Appreciate your opening statement and your comments during this time. I wanted to, at this time, begin the questioning. At this time, members are recognized for questions in order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority members. You will be recognized for 5 minutes each in order to allow us to get to as many questions as possible. Please keep your microphones muted until you're recognized in order to minimize background noise. I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I first want to thank all of the witnesses for their testimony and for being with us. Commissioner Quarles, in your publication on hemp, Kentucky and the Law, you discussed the economic opportunities of hemp, but also the challenges. Could you outline some of the complexities that arose after the 2018 Farm Bill? Has USDA final rule helped to clarify things for states, tribes, and other producers?
Thank you so much for that question, Chairwoman Plaskett. The biggest issue before 2018 for industrial hemp was obviously the federal prohibition classifying it as a controlled substance. And so after the 2018 Farm Bill was passed, other issues emerged as, say, speed bumps, I guess you could say, for the progress of hemp legalization. These were a half dozen issues or so, ranging from problems with the banking industry, with interstate travel or transportation of hemp material, seeds, seedlings, etc. We also saw issues where there was some confusion from law enforcement, as well as the need for us to have standardized and uniform testing across the country. And so I know that USDA at the time inherited a monumental task with legalizing hemp through regulation. And we knew that the interim rule findings would need to be adjusted into the final rule as well. I think that the USDA deserves accolades for the progress that they've made. They have separated out the production of hemp versus the legal products, but there are still a lot of issues that I think need to be addressed in the 2023 Farm Bill. For instance, I think that the lot program at USDA, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of issues between the state regulators as well as the reporting guidelines with the FSA. And I would agree with Commissioner Greenberg that this might be an opportunity for us to look for those states that elect to have hemp programs to have a cooperative federalism program with funding attached. Because what we're seeing right now is that some states may not want to continue underneath the USDA program and leave it to USDA and not let the states regulate. And the final issue that I have is that we need to make sure we have a productive conversation with the FDA so that they can give us clear guidance, particularly on what to do with floral products from derived from hemp. We have a lot of companies that want to sell these products. We just need guidance from the FDA.
Thank you. And Commissioner Greenberg, how have the markets for hemp in the U.S. developed and fluctuated since Congress passed the 2018 Farm Bill? What's needed to provide certainty and stability across the market for farmers, producers, and consumers of hemp?
Thank you for the question, Chairwoman Plaskett. It's an excellent question and one we are very much focused on in Colorado. I mentioned market diversification and how important that is to a thriving hemp economy. Immediately after the 2018 Farm Bill, as I mentioned, we saw a very narrow market opportunity for our producers, which was strictly around CBD. But since then, we've seen much growth around a much more diversified industry for hemp. That includes fiber, food, fuel, and other products like you've heard about today that we are looking into and seeing progress on. I would say one barrier that we are intimately focused on and familiar with in Colorado is the gaps and limits in our supply chain, primarily around processing and manufacturing here in this country. Mm-hmm. So that's a place that we are very much focused on. I think we have a lot of production capacity and incredible farmers who are able to grow fantastic crops. We need to make sure every step along the supply chain across these market opportunities is strengthened and grown.
Thank you. And I guess one of my other questions is, how do, and this is for any of the witnesses, how do you suggest increasing socially disadvantaged farmers' involvement in the hemp production? This seems to be a market where those who are already up and running, farming, know the process, know how to get things to market, are the most successful. How do we get socially disadvantaged farmers involved in this?
Thank you for that question, Chairperson Plaskett. As an 1890 institution, we were clearly founded to address issues like that. So like all of the other land-grant institutions, while we serve the tripartite mission of education, outreach, and research, we have an added layer of making sure that we are targeting the most disadvantaged members of our society, including farmers, community members, et cetera. So I think the USDA has already made great strides, and I do want to give them accolades for the programs that they have put into place for tribal communities as well as historically Black colleges and universities, and for Black and other minority farmers. I think that projects similar to the one that I'm running that I've mentioned, the SUSE project, where we actually partner with all three types of land-grant institutions. So we have 1890s Central State and Kentucky State, we have College of Menominee Nation that Marcus has already mentioned, and we have 3 1862s. I think encouraging those sort of transdisciplinary, multi-institutional research projects and outreach projects would be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At this time, I would ask the ranking member to begin questioning the witnesses for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to begin with the question to Dr. Phipps. In your testimony, you mentioned your role as the project director for Agricultural Food and Research Initiative, Sustainable Agricultural Systems. That grant includes, and it's a grant that includes researchers from 6 different land-grant institutions. So could you talk a little more about the importance of these competitive grants, the lessons that we've learned going through the AFRIP application process, and how a multi-institution project may have benefited your application?
Absolutely. So we are still in the early stages of this project. We are finishing up year one of a 5-year project, but we have already seen the benefits of having, again, integrated, transdisciplinary, and multi-institution focus in the project. And so, like I mentioned, we have Central State University, we have Kentucky State University, we have College of Menominee Nation, we have University of Kentucky, which has already been spoken about here. Tyler Mark is an economist there. We have Mississippi State University, we have an environmental economist on our team from there, and University of Delaware, a consumer economist. I would say that, as I mentioned in my opening, I think that in order to adequately address these complex issues that we're dealing with, you need to have people that are working from all different sides of the issue. So you need your economists, you need your social scientists, you need tribal representatives, you need people that are focused on equity and nutrition and health, you need fish nutritionists, you need hemp or whatever crop you're working with experts to be able to touch on all of the aspects that are going to make the project successful and provide the wealth of information that's needed for policymakers and for consumers ultimately to make decisions regarding a project. And so, again, I think that the Sustainable Agriculture Systems program within USDA, it is currently their flagship program, up to $10 million, has done an excellent job of making sure that they are addressing those complex issues in ways that are going to be sustainable and valuable answers for the long term. And I think that more projects that have those kinds of requirements and those kinds of partnerships are going to be key to continuing to move forward in whether we're talking about hemp or any other commodity crop or agricultural issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Doing great research in the hemp industry, which, as you mentioned, the University of Kentucky, which was one of my alma maters, and they're not represented here today on this panel, but they have prepared a written testimony. So, Madam Chair, with your permission, I would like to submit their report for the record.
It's very welcome and without objection.
So then I have one more question. Mr. Wong, you spent several years in Australia before joining Ecofiber. And while Ecofiber recently entered the U.S. market, you mentioned they've been in operation in Australia since 1999. So could you share some of the differences between what's going on in Australia and what you see here in the U.S. and what this committee might learn to incorporate in our 2023 Farm Bill?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question, Mr. Baird. So Ecofiber started, like I mentioned, in 1999, primarily as a genetics company, collecting a range of genetics from across the world for hemp or cannabis at the time. And a lot of work done by Ecofiber was to set up a genetic pool for the research to be done. So today we have about 2,100 different accessions of hemp genetics. And the work done for the first 15 years was really about growing hemp in the latitudes of Australia, which actually match the latitudes of the United States, which is quite important because I think while people think it's easy to grow, it actually is a bit harder. That in genetics is at the core of that. So that's what the company had done for about 15 years. The work done over there was brought over to the U.S. mainly because of the market size and opportunity in the U.S. And listen, I think the U.S. with the Farm Bill in 2018 has probably a better structure, in my opinion. In Australia right now, hemp is regulated by 3 different agencies. For food, there's something called FSANZ. For medicinal purposes, is a Therapeutic Good Administration. And for fiber, it's actually the Department of Primary Industries. So for me, it's a lot of work managing 3 different regulators for a single crop. The United States, like I said, has done it in a different manner. So you came from a crop down, which I think is far superior. I think a lot of the challenge we have, while they seem significant or not, it's just a bit of clarity required for one specific segment. I think for food and for industrial uses in the U.S., we're very well set up for that. The challenge just become of, I always come from consumer back or manufacturing back. They want they want to know the supply chain exists. Anyone of any size company who's going to use hemp, whether it be in car doors or building supplies, wants to know if they introduce a product to the market, they will have a controlled supply chain that will be there. And that's the big gap that we have today.
Thank you very much. I'm out of time. I would.
Thank you.
I could spend another hour here
Yes.
asking questions. Oh, you're going to say no. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just remind the witnesses to, as you're answering questions, please be mindful of the time so that we can get all of the questions of the members. I'd now like to call on the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Brown, for her 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Plaskett and Ranking Member Baird for holding this hearing today. The 2018 Farm Bill legalized the production of hemp and opened the door for creativity and opportunity for both growers and processors. In the years since the last Farm Bill, we have seen firsthand the importance of strong interagency communication and coordination, especially as it pertains to hemp production. For example, the USDA requires any laboratory testing hemp for the THC compliance to be registered with the Drug Enforcement Agency. Mr. Grignon, what are the impacts you have seen in certain areas of the country where there is no access to DEA-approved laboratories?
Well, I think some of the issues that we're running into is because there's only a few registered DEA labs, a lot of the THC testing is only in certain areas. So you have to literally wait. So you have to take the time to cut your samples or have your samples be cut, and they have to be processed and shipped over to the lab. Now, if there's not a lab in your state, you have to wait and go basically a few states over. So there's basically a lack of testing capacity in our state, in our country right now to handle the hemp industry if we were to start to expand more.
Thank you, Mr. Grignon. A streamlined approach obviously is to regulating hemp products is critical. So Dr. Phipps, can you speak to some of the complexities that arose after the 2018 Farm Bill as it pertains to the regulation of hemp and hemp-derived products?
Thank you for that question, Representative Brown. As you know, my background is primarily in how hemp can affect human nutrition. And so I would say that I can speak to the regulations affecting hemp as animal feed. And so we know that there's been a lot of difficulty, right, in getting FDA approval of hemp as an animal feed. We know that there was a chicken application that went in. It came back with some feedback. I would say that one of the most difficult issues with that is it is costly and it is very unwieldy, the system currently as it is. And so a possible solution to that could be infusing dollars into the FDA CVM in particular to streamline that process. Perhaps looking at what's being done in the European Union right now, where they have hemp already approved in a variety of forms as animal feed, and perhaps using that as a starting point in determining how we can streamline our processes. I would yield my time to anybody on the panel that can speak to some of the other complexities related to fiber and other parts of the process.
Well, before you do that, I would just respectfully reclaim my time. I know that you, Dr. Phipps, have a very exciting project that was recently awarded $10 million in funding from the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And in your written testimony, you talk about the lack of consumer awareness around nutrient benefits of hemp products. How can the USDA and FDA do a better job of educating consumers in this space?
Sure. So we have an entire section of NIFA that is based on outreach and extension in the land grants and through other projects. I would say, again, continuing to fund land grant institutions who have a specific mission to providing that kind of education and outreach. There's work being done already, again, a partnership between University of Delaware and University of Kentucky, looking at what consumer knowledge currently is related to hemp versus marijuana. What are the nutrient values of hemp grain, both from human consumption as well as how they can benefit the food supply related to animal production. I would say continued funding into those areas, curriculum building from K-12 that can address some of these issues. That is another way that we can slow the rise of chronic disease in this country, is to make sure that we start educating our young folks into ways that they can change their diets and their families' diets to be healthy. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Phipps. I look forward to hearing and working with my colleagues to strengthen the hemp production in the next Farm Bill. So thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much to the gentlewoman from Ohio. And at this time, I call on the ranking member of the full committee of the Committee of Agriculture, Mr. Thompson, for his 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, thank you so much, and thank you to all the panelists once again for your testimony. Mr. Wong, over the last 18 months, my colleagues and I have been championing conservative natural climate solutions to help address climate change. We know our producers are part of that solution, a big part of that solution, not part of the problem. That being said, I'm particularly interested in the work that Ecofiber is doing to make hemp a natural climate solution, particularly surrounding hemp black. Can you talk more about this work?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thompson, and thank you for that question. What we've been working on is, so when you start from the core part of the plant, we know it's carbon negative, it's one of the largest carbon sequesters, so I won't go into that topic, but of the plant, a large part of the fiber is being used already for many different uses, and that makes up about 25 to 30% of the plant, which leaves, vast majority of the plant, the stalk, unused, and it's being used for a lot of lower quality, low grade uses such as feed, or such as plant bedding or animal bedding. So what the stalk has is a very high amount of carbon in it. And so we went through a lot of research and developed a carbonization process to actually create an equivalent of carbon black. And so for everything that's black or colored black in the world right now, it's typically used by carbon black, which is the incomplete combustion of petroleum, which is a carbon positive input. So the hemp black that we create with the hemp-based carbon is 100% bio-based, as tested by the USDA as part of the BioPrefer program, and it's a highly carbon negative input. And so that input is carbon black, which can be used in bioplastics, it can be used in rubber, it can be used as colorant in textiles, or as an ink or a coating right now. So our focus right now is using it to make a lot of different plastic products, 25% bio-based. Everywhere from as simple as black shipping pallets, which is a big movement to shipping pallets to do that, to black plastics used in agricultural purposes or construction purposes, to use it as the dyes as opposed to carbon black for something as simple as jeans that are black on that. So what we're really doing is finding a one-for-one replacement for an existing supply chain material that's used significantly across the world, and it's petroleum-based, and replacing it with something that's plant-based, which is hemp. So there's a pretty significant net carbon effect. And like I said, we use the term think negative because while the world wants to get to net zero, most everything is carbon positive, so you got to have something negative to get there. And the beauty of hemp is there are so many different uses of hemp that I only am covering a very narrow pathway to that. But because it's such a flexible crop to be used for so many different uses, you can actually have the growing being negative and actually permanently sequester carbon while you're doing it. And for us, the biggest thing is it has to be a one-for-one supply chain replacement, because I would not expect manufacturers downstream to invest significant amounts of capital just because we want to put hemp into it. Number two, it has to be equal technical specs, which it is. And three, we have to make sure it's the cost equal to or better than. And in due course with scale, I would assume that a petroleum-based carbon black or a hemp-based carbon black, we can get the hemp-based carbon black equal to or better on a cost structure than petroleum.
Very good. Well, thank you. Any other witnesses like to comment on how hemp can be used as a natural climate solution? Go ahead,
yes.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Representative, for the question. I think what Mr. Wong next to me described is very much how Colorado is thinking about the opportunities with regards to hemp. We are very focused on climate mitigation and the leadership role agriculture can play in solving our climate challenges that we have before us now. Hemp is a big part of that solution. I think we have a lot of opportunities, again, looking across diversifying supply chains, investing in the processing and manufacturing, and then going back to the farm and making sure our farmers have support around climate-smart agricultural production to make sure we are looking at soil, water, and climate all together and the markets that combine those things into a sustainable marketplace for our producers. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other witnesses care to comment on that?
Mr. Thompson, I just might add one more, Mr. Thompson.
Please.
The one thing that we're working on as well is mine site remediation, because there's a lot of soil, as you know, what happens on mine sites, and hemp is actually a phenomenal remediator of soil to bring it back to life again by putting the nutrients back in. So, from a soil standpoint, has a significant opportunity for that. Having
represented now for some time the Pennsylvania 15th, it was the 5th district before that, but it's the district that has more abandoned mine sites than the other 434 districts added together. So that's a very exciting innovation you shared this morning. So thank you to all our witnesses. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you to the ranking member. At this time, I would like to recognize the gentlewoman from Maine, Ms. Pingree, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you to you and the ranking member for your concerns about the challenges that growers and states are facing in growing hemp, which is a promising crop, and we have a long ways to go before we've smoothed out all the issues. I think someone earlier mentioned my bill, the Hemp Advancement Act, and some of the problems I'm going to bring up this morning I'm trying to solve in that bill. But I want to discuss one in particular that seems frustrating. The existing DEA lab testing requirements plus the 10-year ban on people with drug-related felony convictions receiving a hemp disease basically treat hemp like a Schedule I drug, which is ridiculous in my mind. And I've talked to some producers in Maine who have problems where their employees are struggling to get fingerprints that are acceptable by the FBI for criminal history reports. One grower told us that had to be printed 5 times before it finally worked. We have only one post office that does fingerprinting, which is in Portland, Maine. I can't make appointments there. The State Bureau of Identification does fingerprinting. They're in Augusta. We have a big rural state. We have growers all over the state. So I'm just talking about some of the complications. My bill would remove this unjust 10-year ban and also removes the requirement about hemp testing in DAA labs, which I think has already come up. But Ms. Greenberg, thank you for the work that you're doing in Colorado. Have growers in your state run into similar issues? And could you speak to how eliminating the DEA lab testing requirement plus this 10-year conviction ban could help our hemp growers?
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative Pingree, and excellent questions. On the first question, the DEA labs, as I mentioned in my testimony earlier, this has been a big barrier for us. We have a state-of-the-art brand new laboratory at our headquarters in Colorado. We have fantastic scientists, experts in their field. We are a state that has been regulating both marijuana and hemp successfully for many years and doing so separately and able to manage that through our labs across the state. So the fact that we are now 3 years into navigating our request for certification with DEA and still have yet to receive it, with almost a decade track record of success, to us indicates that that is excessive in the regulatory structure and not necessary to creating a safe and reliable regulatory framework for regulating hemp in our states. On the second question on the 10-year ban, as I mentioned earlier, we feel strongly that hemp is a commodity crop. It is legal to produce and that we should not be criminalizing or intending to criminalize producers for producing a legal crop. I think with that framework, that 10-year ban is something we would absolutely be interested in looking at. We are doing quite a lot of equity work as well throughout our state and making sure that folks who have not had access to producing for one reason or another have access to that now that hemp is legal and is a legal crop, and we want to make sure that we maintain that within our regulatory structure as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you. The other thing that we're working on in the Hemp Advancement Act is to raise the allowable THC threshold for hemp and the in-process hemp extract to make the rules more workable for growers and processors, also ensuring that final hemp products sold to consumers aren't intoxicating. Mr. Quarles and Ms. Greenberg, can you talk about producers that have had to destroy their entire crop due to the current THC threshold and how raising the threshold could help growers and processors? This also has caused unnecessary hardship to growers.
Yes, thank you for that question. Since the early days of bringing it back almost a decade ago, we've had to deal with what we commonly term hot hemp that exceeds the legal definition. And so we've had a struggle to determine how to do that, both under the 2014 Farm Bill underneath the research side, and then again after 2018. And even today, with almost a decade of improved genetics, we still find varieties that consistently test hot. So one of the things we do is that we actually prohibit varieties that we know will test hot and we don't consider to be hemp. And so we try to prevent and mitigate on the front end. And then on the back end, if a crop were to exceed the 0.3% threshold, we actually have an opportunity to retest that crop as well. And during the interim final rule, we advocated strongly that USDA allow growers to have a second testing opportunity, which they did include in the final rule. So that helps us out a little bit as well. For your question about raising THC, we at NASDA actually passed a policy on behalf of all the state departments of agriculture a couple years ago that would advocate for an increase to 1% THC. We think that after a lot of conversations with law enforcement, as well as those on the ground producing the crop and the labs testing it, that raising it to 1% would allow for us to have a little bit more flexibility, particularly on the research of genetics.
Thank you so much. I'm out of time, but I want to thank the witnesses for your time today and the work that you're doing. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to yield 5 minutes to Mr. Carbajal of California, if he's available. Are you there, Mr. Carbajal? You may begin. You are muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry about my delay. Thank you to all the witnesses that have joined us today. We have made tremendous strides in the 2018 Farm Bill when hemp was legalized. I know the Agriculture Committee doesn't have jurisdiction over descheduling cannabis, but I hope that once we are able to work through that, this committee can work to recognize cannabis as an agricultural product as well. Cannabis is already legal in California and several other states. Legalizing hemp has allowed this industry to start flourishing, as hemp can be used in a variety of products from CBD to clothing to food. This is a versatile product that has benefits for consumers and the economy. In this next Farm Bill, I hope we can continue finding ways to bolster research and production. Commissioner Greenberg, the decrease in registered hemp acres in Colorado from 2020 to 2022 is significant, falling from nearly 90,000 to less than 4,000. You note this is due to many factors, including supply chain disruptions, a surplus, the lack of infrastructure for food and fiber production from hemp. Have other crops been grown on this acreage that is not currently producing hemp? Which of these factors do you most attribute to the decline in registered acreage, and how can Congress help alleviate this?
Thank you, Representative, for the question. The production in 2019 looked a lot different depending on where you were in the state. There were some existing farmers who were trying out hemp production as part of a much larger production in other commodities or other crops. There were other producers who came in who were maybe first-time hemp growers who put everything into a hemp business and rolled the dice on the 2019 market. So it really depends in terms of kind of which entry point a producer came in 2019, what that land is being used for now. We are certainly continue to see plenty of land under production with other crops that was in hemp production in 2019. So I think the primary driver of that sort of rise and fall within the course of a single season was sort of the fury or the fervor around the hemp production opportunities within that year. Just tons of untapped opportunity, a lot of folks coming in at once, an unregulated marketplace, and a lack of diversity in market opportunities. So where I see us now, I think we're in a much more stable growth position. I think we've probably stabilized to a place that's more manageable based on just the maturity of markets right now. We're in a nascent phase of this industry. And I think as markets mature, as we get more stable regulatory environments, and we build up the supply chain processing and manufacturing opportunities, and then as we've discussed, look at those environmental opportunities as well, where our hemp producers can tie into climate markets or other marketplaces that are driving toward a carbon neutral future. As all of those aspects develop, I think we're going to see a steady rise back toward production, but in a more sustainable rate.
Thank you for that very thorough answer. Dr. Phipps, in your testimony, you talked about a lack of incentives for hemp growers to partner with domestic buyers and processors. What kind of incentives would be helpful? Do you see Congress facilitating this connection? If so, what should that look like?
Thank you for your question. So yes, in my testimony, I mentioned that one of the stakeholder concerns that we see is a lack of incentives for growers to partner with producers. So as has been spoken about previously, at the very beginning there was a sharp rise in production of hemp, and many growers were counting on partnerships with processors to be able to process their products. And so I think that if we can incentivize, as we fund processors to build infrastructure, we provide funding within that they can set aside to recruit growers and pay growers for their products. When that happens, we can build the network at the same time.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you very much to Mr. Carbajal. Thank you for your testimony. At this time, I'd like to call the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Big Al Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thank you, and welcome to the members that's on this committee. It's a very important committee, and also give an honor to our ranking member, Congressman Baird, for this hearing that we have today. Many of the witnesses today mentioned massive financial barriers when entering the industrial hemp market, including the registration and testing fees and background checks. So this question is to Dr. Phillips. Can you speak more on to what are some of the effects within the land-grant university system corporate extension services that provide technical and financial assistance to historically underserved agriculture products, including new and beginning and small-sized businesses, veteran-owned, and socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers based on race and gender?
Thank you for that question. And as I mentioned earlier, the 1890 land grants were specifically founded to make sure that we are equitably financing, educating producers, farmers, and consumers from underprivileged backgrounds. As a matter of fact, one of the other projects that I am working on is designed to grow healthy communities by touching on all aspects of the social determinants of health. So that includes building micro incubator farms in low access areas. It would include training in community and economic development and business development for those small farmers and helping them to get their products out into the value chain, and then also educating consumers in that area of the benefits of purchasing those items from those local farmers that are being developed. I think that if we can continue that work, certainly we need to make sure that we are providing opportunities for farmers and producers and processors from historically disadvantaged communities to have access to funding in order to build infrastructure. In the past, there hasn't necessarily been equitable access to those competitive grants. We know that both colleges that serve historically disadvantaged communities, as well as producers and farmers from disadvantaged communities, may not have professional grant writers. They may not have the ability or the infrastructure set up to be able to competitively apply for those grants. And so providing opportunities for that, whether that is earmarked funds specifically dedicated to them, or whether that is providing assistance in the process of applying for and receiving those fundings and implementing those particular programs would be helpful.
Dr. Phillips, just one other thing that I would ask you. I'm concerned about gender, especially for women. How how have all of this industry development and stuff affected women who wanted to enter in this process of hemp development, especially let's see what's happening in the state of Florida?
So I can't speak to the state of Florida. I am in the state of Ohio, but I can speak as a woman who is in the field of agriculture and STEM. And you are correct. Historically, the fields of agriculture and STEM have been very dominated by men, dominated by white men, and that's seen even in the sushi project that I'm leading. There's been 32 that have been funded. These are those flagship programs of the USDA. Out of those 32, there have been only 8 women that are lead on the projects. When we start layering on the additional things such as on top of gender, such as race or ethnicity, we start to see that there is a significant underrepresentation of women receiving funding, of women farmers, black women farmers, brown women farmers that are entering the field. I certainly think that a review of funding processes, of the way that we are recruiting, right, targeting recruitment of those individuals so that we can, I would say, bring back, because women and women of color have always been involved in agriculture. They have always had a hand in growing the crops that feed their families and their communities. And so I think that targeted recruitment and targeted outreach and targeted funding to bring women, especially women of color, back into a typically otherwise dominated agriculture and STEM field is needed and important. And I thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Phillips, and that's very good what you said about gender, which is very important to me. Madam Chair, I'm gonna have to leave and go to financial services, but this is really a great hearing. I'd like to follow up with Dr. Phillips on some other issues that's related to gender.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your insightful questions. Before we adjourn, as we close, I'd like to first invite the ranking member to share any closing comments he may have.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll make it very quick because we've got votes, I recognize. But you know, we've heard a lot of great recommendations for the 2023 Farm Bill here today. And one that I'd like to add is that the FDA hasn't really had any kind of regulatory framework for hemp-derived CBD. So I would encourage us to include that in our discussions about the 2023 Farm Bill. And I thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, and I agree wholeheartedly with that assessment. As we close, I would like to first thank all our witnesses for their insightful testimony and their answers to our questions. Your expertise and knowledge are crucial for ensuring that the next Farm Bill does all it can to support producers and ensure the long-term success of the domestic hemp industry. Today, we heard from an update from several stakeholders on the current state of hemp production. We also heard about what has worked for the USDA domestic hemp production program, and more importantly, what has not worked and needs improvement. I'm personally excited to continue to work with our panel and witnesses and the producers they represent, as well as members of our committee, to make sure farmers have the tools, guidance, and assistance they need to support their businesses and their communities, as well as now understanding the processors and others in the supply chain as well. I would like to again thank our witnesses for being here today, as well as all our members for giving this important topic the attention it deserves. Under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any questions posed by a member. This hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research is adjourned.